Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to, there we go. Welcome to Wednesday. Welcome to Wednesday, September 8th. We're just waiting for some in-class students to arrive because clearly people haven't adjusted their alarms or their body clocks yet. Yep, but that doesn't matter. We're going to go ahead. I'm going to say some good mornings here. So Jesse's here, so good morning to you, Jesse. Adon is here. Good morning to you, sir. Peter is here. Good morning, Peter. And Kayla's here. Good morning, Kayla. I've got a message to respond to you a little bit later, and I will do that. But I did see it. Okay. So let's jump in. Yesterday,
Actually, I have
yeah,
a question
sure.
regarding my ID card.
Yes.
Which I forgot to ask yesterday.
Okay.
So my ID card says here fall 2021.
Yep.
And it says valid only with a validation sticker. I think this is the sticker.
That's the sticker.
So is it like invalid after the fall 2021?
Yeah, they'll give you a new sticker, I think.
They'll give me a new sticker.
Yeah, like for winter, if you're here in winter 2022, yeah, they'll give you a winter 2022 sticker.
Some of my friends from here have a permanent ID card. They don't need validation.
Oh, okay. Maybe that was something they did earlier. I'm not sure. You'd have to ask someone in student services about that.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll do
That's as much
that.
as I know.
It was a relevant question, I guess.
No, it's a good question. I don't know the answer to it. That's why I'm referring you on, because that I don't know. Yeah. So yesterday we talked a little bit about the syllabus, and I said the course syllabus was on student portal for you. I'll post the lecture slides there too, but I think everything else I'll post onto Microsoft Teams. Okay. And so today what we'll do is we'll start some of the actual like meat of the course, if you will. And I'll warn you that this first part is a little bit tricky because it talks a little bit about sociological theory and critical theory, and it's a little complicated. And so I'm going to try to steer us through it in as clear a way as I can so that it's not confusing. We could go much deeper into this topic, but we're not going to, because we're just going to pull a few things from it to help us understand what we'll talk about for the rest of the term. So it's complicated stuff. It's okay if you're a little confused here. This is the kind of the most complicated stuff that we deal with, I think, anyway. But it is important to deal with, okay? So we'll start off here, and yeah, we'll say I have a few questions here, and so the questions are, of course, what is social justice, and why should we care about it, and how can we understand it? And so there's not too many people here, so maybe I'll just, instead of asking for answers from the crowd, maybe I'll just, well, what do you think, guys? What do you think, what is social justice to you?
Social justice is justice for people
Mm-hmm.
who are facing difficulties in social life and society, who are taken for granted and are neglected in our society.
Okay, so justice and equality for people who are neglected or struggling, right? I'll throw the word marginalized in there too, because I think you would probably use that word too. Yeah, that's good. Unadi, what would you say?
I think the same thing. Like it's justice for the social people who are socially what is this? Socially facing difficulties socially.
Yeah, and that's that's a reasonably good definition, right? What is? I'm going to make it even more complicated. And online people, if you want to type in some answers in the live chat, I can see them, and so type in whatever you want there, and I'll address it when it comes up. Okay, so don't be shy. I'm always watching the live chat. Right. How would you define justice, though? What would we say justice is? Or how do you, what kind of things do you think about when you think about justice?
Fighting for rights.
Fighting for rights?
Fighting what they and what they are, like, what they claim their right is.
Okay, so knowing,
Sorry.
that's okay, come on in. Fighting for what they're, you don't have to sit so far away, come closer, come
Sorry.
closer. Not too close because it's still a pandemic, but come, come closer. Was there a SkyTrain issue or?
Yeah, it was delayed.
Oh yeah, were you coming from, like?
Metro Town.
Oh, from, okay, on the Expo line?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a little slow. I noticed. I just get on that line when I get to Commercial Broadway, just to go that one more stop. Yeah, I noticed it was kind of slow, but I guess that's what's going on this morning. Hey. Well, I'm glad you're here. We're just talking about we're just starting off. We're talking about what social justice is, and so we've kind of hit upon the fact that it's, for people in society who are struggling or who are marginalized. Good morning. I asked a little bit about, don't sit all the way at the back, come closer. Not too close because it's a pandemic, but still close. Now you're confused, right? You're like, what is this guy talking about? Close, but not too close? Like, that'll do. Sorry. Yeah, we're talking about social justice and people kind of fighting for their equality, right? Fighting for their rights, and all of those things are kind of correct. But maybe I'll ask you another question here. Why should we pay attention to social justice issues? Why are they important? People are talking a lot about them now, but why are they important? It's okay if you don't know. Or it's okay if you're not sure, but you just want to say something. That's okay too. Eunice, I feel like you want to say something.
No, I was thinking about what to say.
And this is tricky, right? And I think that we'll find in this course there's a lot of places where, we kind of know something, but we kind of don't know why, right? Like we know that racism is bad, right? We know that social justice issues are important, right? But sometimes we don't know the why, right? We haven't stopped to think about, oh, well, why is that, right? Why is racism a bad thing, right? And maybe we can dig into that. Well, we will dig into that a little bit later. But it's the same thing with social justice issues. We know they're important, right? We know we need to pay attention to them. But then sometimes the why is a little trickier, right? So let me just go a slide or two further here. This is kind of what we'll, I'm just going to address Kayla here. So Kayla says, a lot of people are not treated equally. So this is in response to question number 2, of course. And that's true, right? That's true. A lot of people are not treated equally. And sometimes that is, sometimes that's understandable, right? Sometimes that's justifiable. And sometimes it's not, right? Like I get to drive a car, but a 10-year-old does not, right? We don't treat 10-year-olds and me the same, right? And I think that's justifiable. You don't want 10-year-olds driving cars around Vancouver. Nobody thinks that's a good idea except maybe 10-year-olds, right? So sometimes, yeah, we don't treat people equally, and sometimes, again, that's justifiable. There's a good reason not to treat 10-year-olds and adults equally. But again, sometimes those inequalities are not justified, right? They shouldn't be, but they are, right? So this is what we'll say social justice is then, right? So it's kind of a belief in a few things that, first of all, people in society deserve and should have access to the same rights, the same resources, and the same opportunities, right? And so it doesn't mean necessarily that everyone gets the same thing, right? We're not talking about communism here or socialism. We're talking about a situation where everyone has access, right? Everyone has opportunity, everyone has rights, right? And again, some people will still succeed, some people will still fail, but we want to make sure that everyone has equal access, okay? And we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. Again, if we believe in social justice, we believe in human rights, right? The idea that people, are worth the same thing, right? People have an equality about them, and even though everyone is not the same, right? Everyone is unique, but all citizens are worth the same thing, right? No person is worth more than any other person, right? And finally, good morning.
Sorry.
That's okay. SkyTrain?
Yeah.
Yeah. And finally, we want to reduce those unjustified inequalities wherever we can, right? So again, we don't want 10-year-olds driving cars. That's not what's going on here. But there are places where we'll see that society is unequal, and we'll have to decide, are we okay with that? And if we're not, then we need to fix it, right? We need to fix that inequality somehow, right? And again, we'll get into all of this. This is, in some ways, this is the course in a tiny little ball, right? What social justice is, why we should care about it, and what we should do, right? But we'll one step at a time. Why should we care about it? Well, this is a complicated question, and Eunice and probably some of you others were struggling with it, and that's all right. It's okay to struggle with it. The reason it's a difficult question has to do with some of these things, right? The idea of, we all have an idea about how the world works, and we'll come to this later, but that comes to us from our culture, from our socialization, right? We've grown up in a culture, we've grown up reading and watching and listening, and we kind of have an idea about how the world works, right? But we all have a slightly different idea about how those things work, and depending on our ideas, that might influence how or why we care about social justice issues, right? We all have certain ideologies that we believe, right? We'll come to this a little bit later too. An ideology is kind of a big idea that's part of your society, it's part of your culture, and it's very hard to not believe because it is kind of woven through all the parts of your culture or society. Again, we'll talk about what those are a little bit later, but depending on the things you believe, that will inform how and why you care about social justice issues. Same thing with your values and morals, right? The things that you think are right or wrong. I would love to talk about how we know. I was talking with my partner about this, and she's going to try it with her class. I'm not sure where we'll try it in here, but I wanted to have a conversation about how do we know what's right and wrong? How do we know what's good to do and what's bad to do?
As long as something that we're doing doesn't harm anybody,
Mm-hmm.
that's good. And if it harms anybody, if it creates difficulties in other people's lives, then that's bad.
And that's one criteria that we could use to figure that out, right? We'll talk about this very shortly here, this idea about who we are as social people, our identities and our positionality. Sounds like a made-up word. It is a made-up word. All words are made up, right? But it's who you are will actually inform how you feel about certain things, and we'll come to that as well. And so some of these may make sense, some of these may make less sense, but they will make sense shortly or by the end of the course for sure. Now, the third question I asked you was, how can we understand social justice? How can we kind of learn to talk about these sorts of things? Because again, you don't have to agree with me here, but I feel a lot of people don't know how to talk about things like this. they don't know how to talk about, let's say, racism. And so what they do is they either try to say all the right things, because if you say the wrong thing, people, right? People blow up and have a big reaction. So people either try to say all the right things about racism, or they try not to talk about it at all, right? Because they don't want to say the wrong thing and then, right? So again, we need the tools to talk about this sort of stuff. We need an approach, and we need some vocabulary, right? We need to figure out how to talk about it. And what we're going to talk, or how we're going to approach this, is from a critical theory approach, right? And so there's going to be 3 parts to this that I'll explain to you. The first, we're looking at social justice from the idea that society is stratified, right? So a strata, I think it's Latin for like a level, is what the word is. And so it's the idea that society has levels, right? Some people are further up, right? And they have more power, right? They have more money, they have more opportunities and resources. And then some people are lower down and they have less. And I think we all kind of know that that's the case, right? We know that there's some people up there like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, lots of money, lots of resources, right? And then there's people like us who are somewhere in the middle, right? And then there's people, at the bottom who have very little. I think we all understand that. We'll come to this very shortly, but critical theory assumes that our perceptions of the world are not the same, okay? So, excuse me, maybe we intuitively know this as well, or maybe we don't, but if you think about this classroom, there are, how many are there? There's 7 of us in here, and it feels like the same class to all of us, right? We're all in the same room and we're hearing the same things and looking at the same things, but in some ways we're not all having the same experience, right? You're all sitting in different spots, right? So you're seeing the room from a different angle. I'm seeing the room from a very different angle because I'm looking the opposite way of everyone else. And the way we experience what we're experiencing now has to do with our culture, our upbringing, even just how we feel in the morning, right? And what's happened to us on our way to the class. We're all having a slightly different experience of what this class is like, right? And so for me, that's, as a teacher, that's always my challenge, right? Is to try and figure out how you're experiencing this, because I know you're not having the same experience that I am, but what is your experience? How does this class feel when you're sitting there rather than here, right? We'll come back to that in a second, but again, our perceptions are different. And the final part is that sometimes things that are true, things that are facts, sometimes those things are counterintuitive. Do you know what counterintuitive means? No? Do you want to look it up for me really quickly if somebody's got a phone handy? Because you're...
Contrary to intuition or common sense expectation.
Say that one more time.
Contrary to intuition,
Yep.
or to common sense expectation.
Contrary to your intuition or contrary to common sense, right?
Yes.
So the idea with critical theory, the idea here is that sometimes things that you would think are true are in fact not, okay? Your intuition tells you it's one way, but it's not, it's another way, okay? And so, again, I'll give you a good example of that very shortly, and that will make sense, okay? So, our critical stance. One of the things that will come up a lot, and I want you to remember this, is the idea that critical theory assumes that knowledge is something that is socially constructed, okay? Now, humans are really interesting creatures because we live in a world of social constructions. We live in a world of imagined things, right? No other animal really does this, right? Most other animals, they deal with concrete objects and their desires to eat and sleep and procreate. But humans have a very rich world that they've created, and a lot of it is imaginary, right? A lot of knowledge and rules and beliefs and behaviors and things that we do are socially constructed, right? They're imaginary. What do you do, before a pandemic? If you meet someone for the first time, what do you normally do? Handshake, right? That's kind of a social construction, right? It is a custom that we do. And of course, different cultures around the world have different customs, right? Sometimes there's bowing, sometimes there's kissing, there's all kinds of different things. But those are behaviors that we have chosen to do, right? And again, this is because humans are also very unique in that they give meaning to things, right? Humans want to give meaning to their experiences. And so when we do that, when we create knowledge or create customs or create ideas in a society, they tend to get passed on and they tend to exist for a long period of time, okay? But again, a lot of the things that we believe and know and do are social constructions, right? They are true because we've all agreed that they are true, right? If I take a $20 bill out of my pocket, which I can't do because who carries money anymore, right? But if I took a $20 bill out of my pocket, how much is that $20 bill worth? $20, right? Why? Why is it worth $20? Because it's a $20 bill. That's what we call, Eunice, that's what we call circular logic. It's worth $20 because it's a $20 bill. Why is it a $20 bill? Well, because it's worth $20. You just get stuck in the loop. That's why it's difficult to answer, though, because it's worth $20 because we all say that it is. It's accepted as a. And what?
People give the worth to things.
Yeah. Yeah.
They like.
Exactly.
Imagine I don't like my home, so it's just like, this is worthy, this is so valuable. So I give the worth to the thing.
Yeah.
That's the case.
Exactly.
The dollar is just paper, but people give the worth to the dollar.
Exactly. So the money, whatever the bill is, right, it's in a way it's we've given it meaning, right? We've given it value, and the only reason it has value is because that's what people agree that it's worth, right? The plastic bill itself is worth nothing, right? You can't do anything with it. You can't eat it, but as long as we all agree that it's worth $20, it's worth $20, right? And so humans have all kinds of things like that where we all simply believe it to be true, and therefore it works as if it is true, right? And so money is exactly that way. As long as we all believe that this $20 is worth $20, then it's worth $20, right? If tomorrow we all agree that money is useless for some reason, then it will be useless, right? So there's better examples of this, and what's that? It's based on our beliefs, yeah. And there's better examples of this. We'll get to them shortly. Yeah, but the idea that knowledge is a social construction is important. And again, I'll give you a better example of it. There's a lot of text on these slides. I apologize. I'm just going to jump over this one. We've talked about social stratification, and I think we understand that level of society thing. I think that's intuitive. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Let's talk about identity and the idea about our perceptions not above the world not being all the same, okay? So, in case we were a little bit confused, this is what identity is, okay? It's the fact of being who or what a thing is, which is a very clunky definition. But when something has an identity, it's a thing, right? There's something that's unique about that person, right? Or that animal or that object, right? An identity is something that makes it uniquely itself. And of course, all of you are unique beings, right? You have an identity. Or maybe more specifically for this class, you have a collection of identities, okay? And this is not a multiple personality schizophrenia thing. This is a little bit different. So let me ask you to do this, okay? Let me ask you to do this. I'll give you 2 minutes. And what I'd like you to do in those 2 minutes is write down as many words as you can that describe your identity, that describe you. Who are you? I am this, I am that, right? So I'm looking for adjectives, right? Descriptive words. Do your best, come up with as many as you can in 2 minutes. The most important characteristics that make you, you. Aspects of your identity, who are you? Such an important question. Who are you? What kind of words best describe your identity or who you are or what makes you you? Put that up. Let's give you 1 more minute. Okay. So, share these with me if you would. Shout out some words. What words describe you? Who are you? Come on, people, don't be shy. You're quiet. Well, it's honest, right? Okay, so quiet, right? And online people, you can type it into the chat too. That'd be great. So I'm quiet. I'm shy, right? What else?
My OCD personality.
You have kind of an OCD personality. Okay. What else?
I'm a human being and designated as a student.
You are a human being, good, part of your identity, and you're a student, right? In fact, you're all students. Okay, good. What else?
I'm calm and likable.
You're calm and likable. Indeed, you are.
And likable.
A what? Analytical.
Yeah,
Analytical. Well, you're also likable. But, yeah, analytical. Okay, good. What else? Dunya?
I'm a curious person.
Okay, you're a curious person, right? You like learning. Okay, that's good. Arad? Is what? It means what? Emotional? Okay, great. Emotion. Motus, you said, was the original word? Nice. Okay, great. What else? Certainly you're all very... You're creative? Great. What else? Here we've got... Kayla says socializer, someone who's very social, right? Some might say an extrovert. Very good. Jesse says, yeah, nice, caring, smart, funny, awesome. All right, compassionate. Yeah, and an introvert. Good. What else? What else are we? I'll add some of my own in. I think I'm funny sometimes, but maybe that depends on the person listening. I'm very optimistic. I usually think things will work out for the best, and I often think that things are going to take very little time to do, and in fact they take a long time. So this is kind of a running joke sometimes with my partner and me. I think everything will take 10 minutes. You know, I think, oh, you know, don't worry, yeah, it'll take 10 minutes, we'll get it done, and then 2 hours later it's finally done. So yeah, I always think everything will take 10 minutes. So I'm very optimistic. I love animals. I'm an animal lover. I'm a teacher. It's part of my identity too, right? What else? Oh, we've got some more here. So we've got a quiet, I guess, quiet and caring and kind. Those are all good. Calm and respectful and friendly. You guys think so well of yourselves. I like all of these are very positive qualities, right? Nobody's saying, you know, oh, I'm such a jerk, you know. So that's nice. That's nice to hear. Give me like 2 more.
Spiritual.
You're what?
Spiritual.
Spiritual. Good one. Nice one. What else?
I talk a lot.
You talk a lot? Okay. Yeah, you're talkative, right?
Yeah.
You're chatty. You're loquacious, if you want to use a fancy word. Yeah, okay.
joyful and loves to make friends.
Joyful and
Loves to make friends.
yeah, and you like to make friends, right? You're very friendly and very outgoing. Good. Loyal? Fantastic. Anything else?
Overthinker.
You overthinker? Yeah, well you're in good company. There's lots of people overthink things. But yeah, overthinker for sure. Anything else? Well, those are all excellent, right? They, you know, again, I'm happy to see that you all think of yourselves so positively, which you should. I'm happy to hear that. Clearly, I'm in a room and in a class surrounded by a bunch of great people, which I kind of knew. But one of the things that's very interesting about your answers is that they are all, for the most part anyway, they're all personal qualities, right? They're all things that make you you, right? Which again is exactly what I asked for, and that's what you responded with, which is great. But for this class, some of those characteristics aren't going to be quite as important as others, right? And the difference here is society and the people around you, right? So maybe one way I'll transition from one to the other is to say that I find it interesting when I do this exercise and I ask students what they think they're like, and I get lots of answers like we just had. But how many of those things that you said or things that we heard, how many of those things can you be with no one else around you? Can you be caring if there's no one there to care for? Not really. Can you be funny if there's no one there to laugh at you or with you? No. Can you be friendly if there's nobody there to be friends with? No.
It's not a good way to describe it because of your personality, the characteristic, it depends on your environment. And the environment and you cannot be yourself without the environment, without others.
Yeah.
Nothing without people.
Exactly, right? So yeah, you in many ways you cannot really be who you are without other people, right?
Not leave alone and say, like, I'm good. That's a big lie.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true, and I think it's interesting to think about how much our identity relies on other people, right? Relies on the people around us. We need them in order to be who we are, and vice versa, right? They need us in order to be who they are. But what I'm kind of thinking about here is our identity to, or identities to society, right? And the things that mark us as members of a group, right? So again, you all provided me with great answers about who you are. All of those things are important and yeah, all of those things are important to you and to people around you. But in terms of how the world sees you, there are other parts of your identity that I think we might have forgotten about. And again, it's not surprising that we did, because we're not really taught to think of ourselves that way, right? So for me, for instance, if I thought about some of my group identities, well, I'm a Canadian, first of all, right? That's one group identity that I belong to. In the same way, I am a citizen, right? So that puts me in a different group than all of you, right? Because you're not Canadian citizens. I mentioned that I'm a teacher, and Zartaj mentioned that he's a student. That's one social group that we belong to. I'm also a man, right? That's an important part of my identity, right? Because do people treat me, in part, do people treat me the way I am because I'm a man? If I was suddenly a woman, would they treat me differently? Yeah, a little bit, right? So we do that, right? Do you treat adults the same way as you treat little children? No, right? So our gender has something to do with it, right? So part of my identity is that I'm a man. Part of my identity is that I am the age that I am, right? I'm not an old man, despite what you may be thinking. I'm not an old man, nor am I a child, right? So I don't belong to those groups. I belong to the sort of middle adult group. I'm straight. I'm heterosexual, which again, you don't have to disclose that to me, but I'll put it out there because again, when you're straight, it's easy to share that, right? If you're not, it's more difficult sometimes, but I'll say that. I'm not a particularly religious person, so you would probably, if you were trying to put me in a group, you would put me in a non-religious group, I guess. What else am I? I'm white, right? I'm a white person, and so when I go out into society and walk around, I get seen as a white person, right? Whether I like that or not, that's how people see me, right? And so my social or economic class, yeah, I'm somewhere in the middle, right? I don't come from a particularly rich family. I don't come from a particularly poor family. I'm not particularly rich or poor right now. So I kind of sit in the, what's that?
Middle class.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the middle class. I sit somewhere in the middle, right? And so all of those pieces of my identity are not really things that I think about, right? When people ask me who I am, I don't say that, well, I'm a white male heterosexual, right? Nobody says that. That's weird, right? But for the purposes of this class, those are kind of the things that we want to pay a little more attention to, right? Certainly, everybody is still a unique individual, and we need to remember that. But we also need to pay attention to group memberships, because walking down the street as one gender or one race or one sexuality is not the same as walking down the street as another, right? And so, Unadi, if you don't mind me using you as an example here, Unadi and I might walk down, along the seawall here in Vancouver, and I'm a white male, right? Walking down the path. Unadi is a woman of color, right? A younger woman than me. And so, again, we're going to walk down the seawall, we're going to see the same things, but society's not really going to look at us quite the same, right? We belong to different categories, right? And so not only is society going to see Unadi and I differently, because we are a little bit different in that way, but we're going to see the world differently as well, right? I'm a male, I'm white, I'm from Canada, this is the country I was born in, and Unadi's not from here, right? She's a woman of color, she comes from a different culture, from a different country. She's going to kind of see and perceive the world just a little bit differently than me, right? Because you have different experiences, right? You had a different upbringing. Yes?
Can I go to the washroom?
Absolutely. Although we'll take a break in just a few minutes, but you can definitely go. So this is the idea of positionality, right? The idea that our identity, and not the part where we're funny and charming and beautiful to look at. Actually, that's a part we'll talk about the beauty thing later. It's not how funny and charming you are, but your group membership will help determine how society sees you, right? And it'll determine what you kind of see from where you are, right? So my view of society from the perspective of a white male is not the same as Sartaj's perspective of society as a young man of color, right? And as a brown male, right? And the same thing for Unadi, right? As a brown female, she's going to see things a little bit different too. Yes, my friend?
Sorry, actually I've got a definition of white, because I've heard lots of different definitions, and doesn't white consider as UK and United States, I think? Because I've heard this
Is a white person considered as?
the United States and UK nation.
Oh,
Because I've heard something about this a lot in society.
yeah.
I mean, like we are Asians, but they don't call us like white.
Yeah.
I don't know if it is true or not.
Well, this is, we'll deal with this a little bit later, but, we can talk about it now. The idea that, whiteness is a skin color, right? And so I think most people would agree that I am a white person, even though that's not really the color white. I'm kind of a pinky, orangey kind of color. But whiteness is a skin tone, but it's also a social position in some cultures. And so where you draw the line about who is white and who isn't has a lot to do with where in the world you are, and it has a lot to do with what period in history you are. And so what we'll see a little bit later is, for instance, in the United States, during the 19th century, some people were classified as white or classified as not white simply based on who the United States wanted to allow to immigrate there so that they could work, right? And so when the United States needed workers, suddenly, Mexican immigrants were seen as white, right? Even though nowadays we probably wouldn't classify Mexicans as white people. But at the time, the government was like, okay, you're white, we want you to come in and work in the United States, right? But at other times in the United States history, people like, Irish people, for instance, weren't considered white. And nowadays, most of us would consider Irish people as the whitest of the white people, right? And so, yeah, so I guess that's a long kind of answer to your question, but the short answer is it's complicated. And so, sometimes we just, simply go with the idea that, yeah, a white person kind of looks like this. But again, the boundaries between who is white and who isn't white are, it's gray. It's a gray area. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird. It's really weird. So, again, the idea of positionality here is that your group identities, so the groups you belong to, your gender, your race, your sexuality, your citizenship status, your religion, all of those things put you in social groups, and that kind of determines, in part anyway, how you see society and how society reacts to you, okay? And so, again, this is kind of a silly example, but if you woke up tomorrow and you were Rihanna, or you looked exactly like her, or if you woke up tomorrow and you suddenly look like Dwayne Johnson, would people treat you exactly the same as they do? No, right? You'd be treated very differently if you looked exactly like those people, right? And so again, society is going to treat us a little differently based on the groups we belong to. And again, I'm not saying that this is desirable. I'm not saying that this is the right way or what we should try to do. I'm simply saying that this is kind of what happens, right? And so our group memberships that we belong to influence the way people see us and influence the way people treat us, okay? All right, you want to take a little break? Okay, me too. Let's take a quick 10-minute break. I'll put a timer on the board, and then when the timer is up, we'll start again, okay? All right, see you in 10 minutes. Okay, and we are back. So let me just see what my next.
Do I close the door?
You can. It's up to you. I was leaving it open just for airflow. So yeah, this is the point of positionality, right? Where you stand in society in terms of any of these categories, your gender, I know that's kind of tiny, your gender, your age, your race, your ethnicity, your religion, what's that? Yeah, mental and physical ability, social or economic class, your nationality or your citizenship status, or your appearance, right? How good looking you are. That all of those things will influence how society sees you and how you in turn see society back, right? So again, in this room, if you think about it, we're all in a slightly different position, right? And so, sorry, I'm just trying to figure out where I want to be. We're all in a different position, and the important part of positionality here and the idea that we're all having a slightly different experience of this class means that when we're in society, we all have a slightly different, or maybe a very different perception of what society is like, right? What the world is like. And so imagine that, we're sitting in this classroom, but it's really society, right? So Dunya's over there, she's sitting against the wall, and she has a certain perspective from where she sits, right? There are things that she can see that other people cannot, right? So Dunya, for instance, can see what's under that desk in front of her, right? I cannot see that at all, right? What's that? Yeah, neither can Zartaj, right? There's a desk there, I can't see anything in it, right? And so each of us will have kind of a different perspective, right? We'll be able to see things that others cannot, right? However, there are other things that others see that we cannot see, right? And so the idea here is that we're all looking at the same thing from a slightly different angle. We all see slightly different things, right? Some of the things we see we have in common, right? For instance, we can all see what's on the board here. But there are some things that only some of us perceive, right? And so the idea here is that we have to listen to a broad variety of people, right? We have to listen to people from various different groups to really understand how society is, right? And how it's kind of working for different groups of people. Because again, my perspective on how things are going is not the same as yours, right? Does that make sense? Is it okay? Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing to think about, especially because there are many people, and adults included, there are many people who feel that, there's one version of reality, right? Reality is this one thing, and we're all experiencing it the same way, right? And if you think differently, then you must be cuckoo, right? But again, that's not quite true, right? Again, all of us are having a slightly different experience of the world we live in, okay? Now, the other thing that's going on here is the idea that our gender and our social or economic class or our race or our religion, they do matter. And again, I don't know, this is the tricky part of teaching a class like this. I'm teaching a class to people who are from different parts of the world and come from different cultures, and I don't really know what you've been taught or what you think about things, but these categories of identity do matter, right? Your gender, your race, your sexuality, your religion, they do matter. And I'm not saying that they should matter necessarily, I'm just saying that they do, right? People see you differently based on those categories, and those categories will significantly influence your life experience, right? I've had a certain life experience simply because I am a male, right? I was a boy, I grew up as a boy, now I'm a man, and I've had a certain kind of experience because of those things, right? If I was a little girl and I grew up to be a woman, that's a totally different set of experiences, right? That's a totally different identity, right? So
What about people who do sex change operations?
we'll get to them. We'll get to them.
They have both experiences.
Well, I would say that they have a unique experience, right? Because, sorry, the question is, if you didn't hear it, is what about people who transition and start living their life as a different gender? So maybe they're born as a boy and then they transition and live their lives as a woman, as an adult. And so, yeah, that's a different experience as well, right? To grow up as a young boy, but inside feeling like, oh, that's not right. I feel like I'm a woman, and then transitioning and living your life as a woman, and having society maybe treat you as a woman or maybe as something else, depending on how passable you are as a woman, right? Can you convince people that you were born a woman, or are you like, kind of too big and muscular to sort of convince people that you are, a cis woman? We'll get to the terminology later. Yeah, that's a different experience too, right? Now, the other thing I said is that sometimes knowledge is counterintuitive, and we said that, yeah, that's contrary to intuition. That's almost exactly what you said, Zartaj. Contrary to intuition, I wonder if we got it from the same place. What's that?
That's what Google told me.
I think that's probably what Google told me too. Yeah, it's contrary to intuition or common sense, right? And so the thing is that sometimes what appears to be true is in fact not true, okay? Here's an example for you. All right, so what's wrong with this picture?
It shows the earth is flat.
It says, shows that the earth is flat, right? And is that true?
No.
Hmm?
No.
No?
Earth is round.
Earth is round, right? It's a sphere. We've seen it from space, right? We've seen satellites and people on the moon taking pictures of Earth. It's a ball, right? It's a little blue-green ball. Yet here it is portrayed as flat, right? So, believe it or not, you may know this or you may not, but there are actually people out there that still believe that the Earth is flat. Yep.
Even today.
Even today. They think the round Earth thing is a big conspiracy.
You think you'll fall off if you fly
Yeah.
the edge?
Yeah. So, yeah, some people still believe this. But why do I bring this up? Well, first of all, we know the Earth is round, right? That's a very common sense thing to know. But I will point out to you the fact that we really don't experience the Earth as round, do we? If I look out the window, it looks pretty flat to me. What do you think?
It's because we're too small to.
We know that. But still, does it look flat if you look out the window?
Yeah, it does.
It does, right? If I take a ball and put it on the ground, does it roll away to the other side of the planet? No, right? Luckily, otherwise there'd be like balls
Yeah.
everywhere, right? Yeah, but yeah, that doesn't happen, right? You look out the window and you're like, yeah, it looks flat, right? I put a ball down on the ground, it just sits there, it doesn't go anywhere. So we kind of experience the Earth as a flat thing, right? And Zartaj points out correctly, of course, that, well, we're too small, right? We're too small and the Earth is too big for us to really see the curvature, right? But even if you climb a hill, you still can't really see it. It looks flat, right? And even if you climb a mountain, you probably still won't see the curvature, right? Unless you climb the highest of mountains. Then you might see it start to curve a little bit at the edge. But really, in our general experience, we kind of, it feels like a flat Earth, even though we know it's not, right? So our intuition is counterintuitive, right? It seems like, it feels like the Earth is flat, even though, this is the age of science, right? We know that it's round. Right? So, to some degree, it seems ridiculous to talk about this, right? Because again, yes, the Earth feels flat, but we all know it's not. And it's ridiculous to think that it might not be, right? Why are we talking about this? Well, we're talking about it for a few reasons. I used to have a video here. Hang on, let me just see what this slide says, and I'll remember what I was trying to say. One of the things I'm trying to point out here is that sometimes the way that society appears to be is not the way that it is. Okay? Sometimes things that appear to be reality, that appear to be a certain way, are in fact not. Right? And in part, sometimes that happens because of our positionality. Right? So in the same way, Zartaj pointed out that, well, yeah, we can't see that the Earth is round because we're too small. Right? Our perspective is limited. Right? We're very small beings. We look around and we like, yeah, this is a flat thing. We don't really have the perspective to see the roundness, right? But again, if you go out to space, you can very clearly see that it's round. And society works the same way, right? Depending on your positionality, depending on the social groups you belong to, depending on how you see things, some things may be very obvious to you, and some things may not be. Some people may see things that you do not. Some things that you think are correct about the way the world works, in fact, are not quite that way. Okay? So this is kind of why I bring up the flat Earth thing, because again, it's all about our perspective. It's all about where we sit. And sometimes some people are able to see things that we are not. And I'll give you a quick example of this. I don't want to go too far into it, but for a person like me, okay, it would be very easy for me to say that, well, we don't have racism in Canada. It would be very easy for me to say that. Why do you think it might be easy for me to say? What's that?
I think we have this.
Absolutely we do. But
In emotional
100%. 100%. But why would it be easy for someone like me to say, yeah, there's no racism in Canada?
Because you're white
Because I'm white.
and you're Canadian?
Yep. So are people being racist toward me? No.
It's your personal perception.
Yeah. So
Definitely because you don't read the racism. You say just simply there's no racism.
exactly, right? I don't. What? Yeah. Yeah. No. Well, and that's very true. That's very true, Dunya. But yeah, my point here is that because the racism is not really directed at me, it would be very easy for me to say, well, yeah, I don't see any. I don't see any racism. We're all good, right? We're multicultural. Everything's fine, right? It would be very easy for me to say that because, again, I'm not on the receiving end of that racism, right? I don't see it unless I really go looking for it, or unless I talk to people who experience it and say, hey, do you experience racism? And they'll probably tell me something very different, right? So again, our perspective has everything to do with what we can see and what we can't. And sometimes things that are not visible to some are visible to others, right? And so we hear people saying kind of stuff like this, and some of these are based on perspective ideas, right? On positionality ideas. So some of them are based on societal ideologies. Some of them are based on things that we have learned. Some of them are things that we think we should say so that we sound like we're not racists, right? Or we sound like we're good people. But none of them are really accurate or correct, right? People should be judged by what they do, not the color of their skin. Yeah, right? That's what we're aiming for. But again, that's not really where we are, unfortunately. I accept people for who they are. Well, yes and no, right? You do, but you also accept them. You also interact with them differently based on the social groups that they belong to, right? Every society treats men and women a little bit differently, right? And sometimes a lot differently. But most people we don't simply accept people as who they are. I see people as individuals. Fantastic, right? But you also see them as a member of the groups they belong to, right? And again, I'm not saying that any of this is right or wrong, bad or good. I'm not saying that anyone is, good or bad for saying these things. I've said these things, right? But they're all kind of, they all kind of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Well, they're just not entirely accurate of the way things are, right? My parents taught me that all people are equal. Fantastic, right? Good job, parents. However, that's not the way society works, right? Society doesn't treat all people as equal, and neither do you, right? Do you treat your friends the same way as you treat strangers?
No.
No. Do you treat your friends the same way as you treat your grandparents?
No.
No. Right? Your little nieces or nephews or, little kids, do you treat them the same as adults? No. Right? We don't treat all people the same, right? Nor should we, right? We shouldn't treat children as adults. We shouldn't treat strangers the same as our friends, right? We should treat our grandparents with extra special care, right? Those are, those are things that we don't want to treat everyone the same, but yeah. Again, there's more. I won't go through all of them. Again, I always treat everyone the same. No, you don't. Nobody does, right? And you shouldn't, right? I've been discriminated against, so I don't have any privilege. Again, we haven't talked about discrimination or privilege, but that's not really how it works either. Our generation is more open-minded, so I assume a younger generation. Yes, absolutely, but it doesn't mean that there's not things to fix still. I have friends from all races, and we are all fine with each other. Fantastic, right? But again, it doesn't mean that there's still not, problems of racism to deal with, right? I don't think race and gender make any difference. Well, that's too bad, because they do, right? So it's nice that people think these things, but it doesn't make them true, right? It doesn't make them the way society works. And again, it would be nice if race and gender did not make any difference, right? That's kind of what I think that's what we're kind of aiming for, but that's not the way that things work. It's white males who are the minority now. That's just not true at all. Women are just as sexist as men. No, they're not. So again, some of these have to do with perspective. Some of them are aspirational. Some of them are just wrong, right? But they're things that people say in connection with things that they think are just sort of intuitive knowledge, or they're things that they've been taught, and they're all just kind of a little bit off base, The other thing we'll talk about here is, and I'll get to this later, is that a lot of these things are also opinions, and we will dig into the fact that opinions are not the same as fact, right? Although many people nowadays like to treat them as the same thing, right? But opinions are the weakest form of evidence, right? Just because someone thinks something, that doesn't mean anything, right? Chocolate and peanut butter are the best things that go together on the planet, right? That's an opinion, right? It's great that I think that, and I can enjoy chocolate and peanut butter all day, and let's face it, they are pretty good together. But my opinion doesn't make it so, right? My opinion doesn't make it right. Let me just look at this here. Yeah, so all the things we heard are kind of oversimplifications. They're things we've learned, they're just wrong, right? And so paying attention to positionality, paying attention to the idea that sometimes the things that are true are counterintuitive. They're not the way we think they should be. And the idea that many things about the human experience are socially constructed can help us have a better idea of how to see some of these social justice issues, okay? And so most of what we hear from society, whether it's the media or whether it's politicians, is for the most part we hear that things are okay, right? That society is fair, that, oh, maybe we have a few problems to fix. If there's police violence, well, oh, it's just a few bad apples, right? It's just a few bad police. Oh, we don't have racism in Canada. We're very multicultural. We'll hear lots of those things from various sources. And the problem is that how do we discover what's true, right? How do we discover the actual state of things, right? How can we kind of see through, flawed ideologies and, inaccurate statements and things people wish were true but weren't, or people who don't have the appropriate perspective to comment on racism, for instance? How do we see through all that? Well, that's what we'll get to tomorrow, right? I'll have a few guidelines for kind of engaging in this stuff, and then I think we'll be able to go on to learning about culture and socialization, because really understanding a little bit about human culture and how humans kind of learn that culture will be very important for how we go forward. But maybe what I'll do is I'll press pause there and see if you have any questions or things that you would like to talk about, or things that came up in the process of today's class. Because it's a lot, right? That was a lot of stuff. It was not easy. Critical theory is not easy. But hopefully we will kind of have enough of an understanding to kind of move forward. Maybe the biggest, well, let's do this. Maybe I'll just go around the room. What do you think the most important thing to remember from today is? Anybody? Most important thing, or just the thing that stands out the most? What's that? Who you are? Yeah, so your identity, right? The fact that you are a collection of individual characteristics like you named, but you're also your personal characteristics depend on your environment, but also your group memberships are important as well, right? And again, for this class and looking at social justice, we'll want to pay attention to those, right? I don't want you to always think of me as a white person, but for the purpose of this class, that's a thing we'll be talking about, right? What else was kind of important or stood out to you today?
Things are not always true based on our perception. What we think it is actually not that.
Knowledge is counterintuitive, right? Sometimes what we think or what seems to be true or feels like it should be true, sometimes it is, right? But then sometimes we can be misled, right? Especially with society, right? Because societies are big and complicated. Here in Canada, we have 36 million people in that society. it's hard to see what's really going on, right? Especially from our perspective, right? We're just one person. What else important to remember from today? The earth is not flat. Yeah. Earth is not flat. What's positionality?
I have some confusion regarding this.
You have some confusion about that?
Like it's not, clear to me. It's not completely clear.
Okay. Let's see. Let's see if we can clear that up then. So, well, let's say this, is that our group memberships, our race, our gender, sexuality, religion, whatever, those kind of place us in certain social groups, and it kind of puts us in a different perspective in society. Okay, so just like we're in different locations in this room, in society we have the ability to kind of see different things, right? And so based on our group memberships, we see society differently, and society sees us differently, right? Again, walking down the street as a woman of color is not the same thing as walking down the street as a white man, right? It's not the same thing, right? And so society is going to interact with us differently, and we're also going to perceive the world differently. Here's another, no, it's not a good example.
We don't, all of our views are not the same. Like, every individual have a different view.
It's true, right? So we can't say that all white people are the same, for instance, right? But on the whole, society will treat us differently. Here's an example. I got an example for you. This is more an example of privilege. But let's go with it. Society treats us differently based on our group memberships, right? So when I was, oh gosh, how old was I? 13, maybe 14. When I was 14, I was in middle school, I was in junior high, and across the street from our junior high, there was a convenience store. It was a 7-Eleven. And so we'd all go over there at lunch and kind of hang out and buy snacks sometimes, because there was really nothing else around there to do. And so we'd go over and we'd hang out. And I remember when I would go into the store and I'd be, walking up the aisles looking for some sort of super unhealthy snack to eat, the cashier, the person behind the cash, was watching me the whole time. I could feel their eyes like burning into the back of my head, right? And why were they watching me so close? Because I was what? No. Not because I was white. Why were they watching me? What did they think I was going to do?
Steal something.
Yeah, they thought I was going to steal something. Why would they have thought that?
Because you're like a teenager.
Because I'm a teenager, right? I'm 14. That's what teenagers do. They go into, convenience stores and steal stuff. Sometimes, some of them. I didn't steal anything from that store. But I didn't steal anything. But that guy was watching me so closely because I was a teenager, right? And I felt it. I could feel him watching me. Do you think when I go into a convenience store now that anyone watches me?
Probably.
No. Nobody looks twice. I'd have to set myself on fire to get the guy to look at me, right? So nobody looks at me that way because I'm not a teenager, right? And, I'm dressed, fairly presentably, right? I don't look like someone who would steal, whatever that might look like. And so I'm not viewed the same, right? I'm the same, well, I'm not really the same person, but I'm the same person. I'm just older now, right? So 14-year-old Mike was closely watched in the store because the store owner thought I might steal something, right? Adult Mike doesn't get watched because he's different, right? He's in a different social category. I'm an adult, right? And again, I'm an adult who looks fairly, presentable, and I look like the kind of person who wouldn't have to steal from a convenience store or want to, right? So society treated me differently depending on which social category I was in, whether I was a teenager or whether I was an adult, right? And so not only did society treat me differently, but I looked at store owners differently too, right? I thought that store owner was a jerk at the time because I was like, why is he watching me? I'm not going to steal anything. Like, I just want to, buy my chips and go on my way, right? I'm not, and so I was annoyed at him, right? Because he thought I was going to do something that I wasn't going to do. But now, I don't see shopkeepers that way because they don't look at me that way, right? And I'm friendly to them. I was friendly to them back then, but I'm not annoyed with them in the same way. So the way society sees us and treats us has to do with our group memberships, and as a result, the way we see society becomes different as well. It's not a perfect example, but does it help a little bit? Okay. Okay. All right, so that's about all the time we have for today. I'll let you pack it up. Come back tomorrow. We'll just finish up this critical theory thing, and then we will dive into socialization, okay? Okay. Thank you for class today. It was great, and I'll see you all tomorrow, all right?